Welcome to SI Now. I'm Madeline Burke. He's Robin Lundberg, and not even a bomb cyclone can keep us away today.
We bomb atomically, Socrates' philosophies and hypotheses.
He's got the flow already early in the morning. All right, we've got a lot going on today. We've got Jerome Bettis here. But first, we got to start with the NBA and what was supposed to be a marquee matchup. The Celtics dominated the Cavaliers on Wednesday night. Now, LeBron says the Cavs don't know who they are right now. They seem to go through this every season. But did the Celtics get good enough where it's for real now?
Well, if it's not for real right now, it's going to be for real. Let's address this game. I expected the Cavaliers to lose, so that's not shocking. Second night of back-to-back. Isaiah Thomas was back in the previous game. A letdown was, going to happen in this situation. The Celtics still have a problem stopping LeBron James driving it right down their throat. But watching a game like last night, I realize it's not if the Celtics are going to take over the Eastern Conference, it's when. And thinking big picture, it really makes me believe LeBron James should leave Cleveland again. For basketball reasons. The team around him is not growing around him. They are squeezing the very last remnants of the juice out right now.
I mean, it's no Boobie Gibson, right?
Yeah, there's no Boobie Gibson to, sit there and spot up three-point shoot. But J.R. Smith, who is a spot-up three-point shooter, is not shooting well right now. Tristan Thompson doesn't look like the player he was a couple of years ago. If you go around that roster, there's not really anybody outside of maybe Isaiah Thomas who you look forward to playing with. So the Cavs should be all in right now to try and win the championship. But if I'm LeBron James, I'm surveying the landscape and realizing if my goal is to continue to maximize my prime and continue to win championships, that goal is probably not going to be realized in the future in Cleveland, and there are better destinations out there, probably most notably Houston.
I do believe, though, that the Celtics are taking over the East. It's not if, it's when. But, LeBron, I mean, is he going to bounce around like the little dot on the balls on the lyric screens, or is he going to, stay put and get a championship in Cleveland again? Remains to be seen.
Is that possible to do?
Is it possible?
Bouncing around wouldn't be the worst thing if he actually won, because I don't think any superstar in history has ever won in 3 different places. Of course, the focus is winning right now. Isaiah Thomas a part of that. He didn't play in the game, of course, but he did make his return to Boston, received a standing ovation, and made a little news saying he's good with Danny Ainge now after Ainge recently reached out to him via text message. Is a text sufficient for forgiveness?
Well, according to the Boston Globe, Isaiah Thomas was saying that Ainge has reached out to him a lot of times via text message, has texted him a lot since that trade happened, and Isaiah just didn't respond. And it wasn't that he was mad at Ainge, it was more that he just wasn't ready to talk about it. But he said, Ainge was at the game. He said he was just happy to see him play, happy to see that, it looked like he could have played a month ago, and was very encouraging. And Isaiah said, that was good to hear. No bad blood, I'll allow it. And, he mentioned he didn't want to play. He couldn't make his debut against Boston playing, only 19 minutes in that game. So, it was good to have that debut or that showing and that reception in Boston.
Maybe the timing of when all this happens makes it easier because now it's over with. He's made his debut with the Cavs. He's made his return to Boston. So it feels like it's all come full circle. As far as the etiquette of text messages themselves, it depends. Maybe if I'm in Isaiah's situation, I don't necessarily want to hear from Danny Ainge.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to talk to you. So the fact that you say, hey, just checking in on you, how's it going? All right, I get it. That's the proper way to handle it.
Hey, don't be mad. I'm sorry. I did what I had to do. I mean, Danny Ainge does what he has to do to get the W's in Boston. In this situation, Ainge felt like it was the right move. Well, otherwise, elsewhere in the NBA, an NBA investigation has found that Lakers assistant Brian Shaw did not tamper with Paul George while George was still in Indiana. Now, the two are close. They reportedly often go on father-son like fishing trips. And while there was some evidence of tampering by the team, Shaw is in the clear. Now, that, in addition to Russell Westbrook's comments yesterday, in which he said the sales pitch to keep PG-13 in OKC is going to be when we win a championship. Now, what do we think now about the chances of Paul George going to LA?
It all depends on the factors he's weighing. Look, Paul George doesn't seem to really want to be the guy in the way some other guys do, like Kyrie Irving, most notably, Russell Westbrook, his teammate right now. So if he's cool with the lifestyle and the Lakers and being around those young guys and growing as a part of that franchise, that makes sense. I mean, there are different reasons people make decisions. If his ultimate goal is playing out the rest of his prime and having a chance to win, Oklahoma City is about as good a situation as he's going to find him in, or he has to cherry pick one of the other current contenders. Cleveland, if LeBron stays, would make sense there, of course, as well. But right now, they've sort of figured things out a little bit, because once they've gone back to Russell Westbrook as the ball-dominant player in Oklahoma City, and Paul George and Carmelo Anthony more as super role players, they've thrived a little bit, and George is okay in that situation. So I don't know what he's thinking internally, but the sell for the Lakers is more long-term and lifestyle than it is winning a championship right now.
And it's your hometown team, but Russell Westbrook also from LA, so having another LA guy in Oklahoma City, making this LA of the Midwest kind of headquarters, and it could work for these guys.
Speaking of LA, unsurprisingly, Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold are heading to the NFL, but they've now officially declared. Here's what the MMQB's Albert Breer had to say about their pro prospects.
Rosen's the guy who looks like he was born to play quarterback, and probably, if you look at the three of them, he's probably the most evolved on the field. He's a guy who can probably step in and play right away. He's got some off-field questions, but as far as what type of player he is, the way he throws the ball, it just looks like he was born to play the position. And then Darnold's a guy who needs a lot of mechanical work, but the off-field for Darnold is off the charts. Leadership, poise, a winner, all that stuff is there with Darnold. And so each of these guys have different holes in their game, and really for the teams at the top of the draft, it's going to come down to, what do you feel most comfortable working through? Do you feel most comfortable working through Darnold's mechanics? Do you feel most comfortable working through Rosen's off-field problems? Those are the questions we're going to hear asked over the next few months.
Now, which guy do you think makes more sense for the Browns and Giants, respectively?
Well, there are so many similarities between these two guys. They're both the same height, the same weight. They're both playing college football in LA. They're both from different parts of LA. But like Breer said, the off-the-field things really do stand out. And for a guy like Rosen, you can't forget about that hot tub in the dorm room kind of party guy kind of thing. And I feel like if he were to end up in a situation like Cleveland, there is a chance of him going down a Manziel-like path. But that being said, Darnold being kind of the buttoned-up guy off the field is something that the Giants do look for when they draft players. They look for guys that are not only talented players, but are also stand-up guys. So I do think Darnold would be more of a target for the Giants than I think Rosen would be. Better fit, they're both very similar on the field.
I want to defend Rosen for a second, because there's a difference between a lot of these guys and Manziel, and that comparison always comes up. And
right.
Manziel seems to have legitimate problems with substance abuse, and there can be, of course, a big line between problems and having fun. And Rosen seems to have a good head on his shoulders whenever I see him speak. But when you're talking about evaluating these guys as pro prospects, I think from what I've seen, and I'm not an expert quarterback evaluator, but having watched the sport for a long time, they stand out more due to the dearth of quarterback play in the NFL than they do their individual talents to me. The Browns are always looking for this quarterback. Of course, the Giants may be looking for the replacement for Eli Manning. So I don't know if I love either of those guys as the 1 or 2 pick, because it feels more like need than those guys being the guys who should be selected there.
Right, and the Giants may still trade that number 2 pick, but one thing that's interesting too is these guys, I think, will be tied together through their pro careers. They even declared for the draft 22 minutes apart from each other. There's so many similarities. I think as their careers unfold, they're going to be continued to be compared to one another. Now, elsewhere in college football, after a 13-0 undefeated season, UCF now didn't get the college football playoff shot, but that apparently doesn't matter. The school announced they'll be hanging a national championship banner and will be throwing a parade. They're calling themselves national championships. They're calling themselves national champions. Is this admirable or asinine?
It's very close to being admirable. I would be all in on celebrating the undefeated season. Championship parade in the sense where you're calling it undefeated parade. Banner in the sense where you're calling it undefeated season.
Right.
But to declare yourselves national champions, that's where you lose me a little bit, because that's factually incorrect. Factually, you did go undefeated. So live it up. Tell everybody they're wrong. Throw it in their face. Celebrate. Install hot tubs in the dorm rooms. Whatever you want to do. But don't tell me you won the national championship. That's where it starts to get into asinine territory.
UCF, you don't get to grade your own papers. One thing that's going to be interesting, though, is in like 15 years, 20 years, when someone's at a game there and they look up and think, I don't know UCF won the national championship that year. I don't remember that.
They vacate titles all the time. Why can't you just
Why can't
add
you
them?
just add them yourself, Just this is how it works these days. All right, well, meanwhile, the Browns trended hard in the opposite direction this past season. They did not win a single game, but Cleveland fans are finding a bright spot and throwing a city-sanctioned winless parade. Now, if you're a Browns fan, are you on board with this?
It's not quite what the Bills are doing with their euphoria and making the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, you have to celebrate something, right? If you're a Browns fan, you can't just wallow in your own misery. And things could actually be getting better for the Browns. They're set up really well in the draft. The question is how they're run as a franchise, because I think the previous regime actually set them up rather nicely, where they have the first pick, the fourth pick coming up, a bevy of picks later in the draft. So I get it. Browns fans want to sort of have a little fun with it. So I'm not mad at it.
I think it's definitely going to be a spectacle, if nothing else. And you got to have something to cheer for after an 0-for season. I mean, that's only been done once previously in the current length of football season.
Yeah, the Browns really should be the team that were 0-16 to themselves, but the Lions spoiled that. Yeah. The Ball family has landed in Lithuania, and it certainly looked like big baller baggage claim when they showed up as they were mobbed by fans and media upon arrival. Their team is also in discussions to set up a tournament later this month with EuroLeague teams to get the Ball brothers more playing time. Are you interested in watching LiAngelo and LaMelo in Lithuania?
First of all, I gotta point out that this is LeVar Ball's heaven right now. Coming into this swarm of media, like, yes, here we are. You're welcome. I think it's going to be interesting to see these guys play. I would compare it to, it's reality TV, really. I mean, they've got so much talent. I'm just curious how it's going to translate, number one, to the Euro game, and number two, if LeVar is going to continue to be a distraction and pulling the puppet strings, and could that be detrimental to these guys who do have so much talent, and if in the right situation could really flourish as professional basketball players, but will they be able to flourish under this scrutiny?
I'm super interested to see how it's broadcast, how much interest there is, and I think one way or another, LeVar Ball is going to revolutionize the NCAA. Yeah. Whether it's directly and whatever he does succeeds, or indirectly because people see that the international route is something that's viable, that you can go play professionally. A lot of these leagues are better than college basketball, or if it's domestically, whether it's the G League or some other league, guys, instead of going to college for a year to go through the motions, decide, hey, I'm going to get a head start on my pro career. So I think when we look back on it, whether he winds up being the champion of it or not, LeVar Ball's decision to do this may be the watershed moment that actually makes some change.
He's creating a lot of options, a lot of different avenues for players. I mean, Google's even calling him the NBA founder lately. So, give him that at least.
We're here with the Hall of Famer, Jerome Bettis, who comes to us courtesy of Land O'Lakes, which we'll get to in just a second. But Jerome, I think fans associate you as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And of course, they're in the playoffs right now. How much are you still involved with the Steelers organization?
I not that much. I still have semi-regular interaction with a lot of the players. So I'm still relatively involved, but not too much.
Now, you spent the majority of your career with the Steelers, and in the past you've said that you thought that there's a magic age of 30 with the franchise, and kind of they start to phase out players as they get older. Do you think that had anything to do with James Harrison's departure, and what are your thoughts on him heading to New England?
I believe that at the end of the day, James is a football player and he wants to play. Obviously, he was looked at as an insurance type of situation for the Steelers. They drafted a first-round outside linebacker, so you kind of knew that his opportunities were going to be limited. He wanted to play more, of course. He would. Obviously, the career that he's had, he wants to be on the field. So you knew that it was going to come to a head at some point. Unfortunately, he made a decision to go to New England. That was probably the one place of any place that he had gone to that would create this type of issue, because obviously the Patriots are the team that the Steelers have struggled to beat.
Well, you know this fan base well, though. How will he be remembered by Steelers fans, and can he make amends with that organization?
You know what? I believe he can make amends if the Steelers beat the Patriots this year.
All right.
If the Patriots beat the Steelers, I think he'll go down as one of those guys that made a bad decision late in his career. But ultimately, I think when you look back at his career. As a Pittsburgh Steeler, it was an incredible career that he had. So hopefully it won't be tainted by this move. Obviously, it's a latter part of his career. So hopefully people remember the great part of his career in Pittsburgh.
To that point on beating the Patriots, the NFC feels more wide open. Of course, anything can happen, but it does sort of seem like there's a collision course between the Patriots and the Steelers. Do you believe the Patriots just have their number, or can Pittsburgh beat them?
Well, I think historically the Steelers had the wrong type of defense to really defend the Patriots and Tom Brady in particular, because they were more of a zone defense. They had the fire zones and that type of thing, where the Patriots and Bill Belichick and that brain trust, they had a great understanding of how the defense worked. And so they gave Tom Brady all the tools necessary to beat the Steelers year in and year out. And so I think now the Steelers have had to change their philosophy in terms of how you attack Tom Brady. So now you see more man-to-man defenses. And I think they've been able to close the gap. You go back to the championship game last year, and they got blew out of that game, where in the regular season, they lost a close game that really went down to the last play of the game. And so that tells you that the Steelers' defense, in terms of how they're attacking Tom Brady, is much better at it. And I think it's going to be a close game if they see each other in the playoffs.
Now, you were a beast on the football field, but I understand as a kid you wanted to be a professional bowler.
I did, actually. I wanted to be a bowler. As a kid, I grew up bowling. I didn't grow up playing football. I didn't play football until high school. So my younger years were all about bowling and league bowling and tournament bowling. So I wanted to be a professional bowler of sorts.
What's a bigger accomplishment, though, bowling a 300 or winning a Super Bowl?
I'll say this. The individual accomplishment is definitely better rolling a 300, because that's so rare to have an opportunity to do that. So to win a championship, of course, is rare, and it was a dream come true for me. But that 300 was really special.
Your prime can go a lot longer when you're bowling, right? You don't have to constantly contemplate retirement like Ben Roethlisberger really did before this year. And speaking to that, I mean, he contemplated the retirement, but they're right back in the mix of things, as we were just talking about. How long do you expect Roethlisberger to be the quarterback of the Steelers for?
I expect him to be the quarterback for some years to come. I don't believe like this will be the last year. I think he's got a great group of players around him, and I think as long as they can keep that group together, I think he would want to be there to lead those guys, because they make his job so much easier. I can remember when he had to fight through it because we didn't have enough around him at times, but to have that talent around him, I think he'll be there for a couple more years.
What difference do you see in him now versus then? Is it the talent around him?
It's the talent around him, but I mean, he's developed as well. I mean, he's become a top-tier quarterback in terms of an elite quarterback in the NFL. And so you go through and you see his development. He's become one of the best in the game, and I think that's a credit to him and the way he's approached the game and what he's put into it. But I think he still wants to win another championship. Now, if he wins a championship this year, maybe all bets are off on him walking away, but I don't see that happening yet.
Switching gears a little bit to somebody who did retire, at least from being active in the NFL, Bill Cowher, guy you're familiar with. He's constantly been rumored to be returning to coaching. Somebody who did, or is about to, it seems, go from broadcasting back to coaching is John Gruden. If that does work out with the Raiders, how do you think he'll do going from the booth back to the NFL?
You know what? John Gruden was one of those guys that always kept the pulse of the game. I mean, he met with the quarterbacks every year. He was always involved in the passing game, wanting to know the evolution of the game. So I don't see him being that far removed from the game to be able to step back in, I think, and have success. So I expect him to come in. He's got a great group of offensive players that he can work with. So I think he'll be fine. The one question ultimately becomes, can he get a great staff around him that can kind of project his wishes onto that football team? I think he can do that, and I think you'll see success pretty quickly in Oakland.
Now, the running back position has evolved a lot throughout the years, as has the game of football. And when you look at the game now and where it stands, how do you think a player like yourself would translate to today's game?
It'd be tough for me to translate in today's game, because today's game is really throwing the football first and then running the football second. And for me, I needed to touch the football, 25, 30 times a game to really impact the game in the way that I felt I could. So I think it'd be a challenge now, because most teams want to really go out and throw the football 35, 40 times as opposed to running it that much. So it would be rough, but I still believe I would have success today. Maybe not as much and not as big of an impact on the game as I was, when I played. So a little different era, and the priorities have changed just a little bit.
Luckily, you don't have to find out. You get to be referred to as a Hall of Famer from here on out, getting inducted a couple of years ago. Now the finalists once again announced. How do you feel about T.O. still waiting to get in?
You know what? It's disappointing, because I really feel that when you look at his body of work and the things that he's been able to accomplish, I believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. And unfortunately, some of the antics or some of the things off the field has led to him not getting that nod, or what type of a teammate was he in the locker room, and those type of questions. And I think those questions really shouldn't be asked when you are looking at a player for the Hall of Fame. It was what type of player was he on the football field? Was he able to change the game? And if they had to write a story about the NFL, would they have to mention him? And yes, they would have to mention T.O.
So you're the gatekeeper of the Hall of Fame. And this year you've got Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens. If you could pick just one of them to allow in, who is it?
That's tough. Because, Ray Lewis, he's got to be in the Hall of Fame right now. So, if it was one guy I had to say, I played against Ray Lewis the majority of my career, and he was definitely a Hall of Fame football player. So I've got to go with Ray Lewis if I could only put one in.
Now, something you're involved with now, Land O'Lakes Farm Bowl is coming up. It's pitting current and former pro football players against Land O'Lakes farmers in a series of farm-themed challenges. Takes place on February 1st. Now, what is the biggest difference between football and farming?
Well, I think the biggest difference is probably, your field. My field was a football field, and their field is actually the field
bigger.
outside. Exactly, a lot bigger. So I think, from that standpoint, and the tools are a lot different. The tractor.
The type of cutting you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you'll be surprised nowadays that with technology, it's really changed farming. And so now they're using drones and self-driving tractors. So it's a lot more technically advanced than most people would think. And so I think that's a big difference in now looking at it from that standpoint.
Some of these football players are going to have a whole different
it is going to be
on-field
interesting.
experience.
Yes, it will be.
Jerome Bettis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's almost Wild Card Weekend, and today we're previewing the NFC matchups with Jonathan Jones of the MMQB. Now, Jonathan, Cam Newton recently said, quote, "Going into a hostile environment is really nothing new for us. We've had some of our biggest wins in hostile environments. We're looking forward to it. Carpe diem, live in the moment and seize it." Cam has had some ups and downs this season, but we know what he is capable of. Would you bet on him seizing this moment or not?
It's tough because, Cam does play up when it comes to the playoffs. He obviously led them to that Super Bowl 50 run. This team goes as Cam Newton goes. And so if he has an off game, they're going to lose, point blank, period. That's the end of the story. Unfortunately, of course, he got a little too excited last week in his hometown of Atlanta and played very poorly. It was his worst career game. Now he's going down to New Orleans in the Superdome with the Saints in all black uniforms against a team that they lost to twice. And they were legitimate losses. There was nothing fluky about those losses for Carolina. This is going to be a really tough game for the Carolina Panthers.
Now, conventional wisdom says it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. Now, stay with me here. Since 1970, there have been 20 playoff games between teams that met twice in the regular season, with one team sweeping the series. In 13 of those games, the team that won the previous 2 won the third. Do you believe the Saints have the advantage here?
I do. I just think they're the better team, and they were the clear best team in the best division in football this season, the NFC South. That obviously sent 3 teams to the NFC playoffs. They beat, like I mentioned earlier, they beat the Panthers by double digits. The Panthers never really found a way to stop Alvin Kamara, the soon-to-be Offensive Rookie of the Year, or Mark Ingram. We're seeing that Drew Brees is doing less with more when it comes to his passing statistics. And then we see a competent defense with Marshawn Lattimore, who should be the Defensive Rookie of the Year. We see Cam Jordan, a guy that I think should get some consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. This is a good Saints team. I'm not necessarily saying this is 2009 Saints and that New Orleans should be ready for a Super Bowl. I see the NFC as wide open, but when Carolina has to play New Orleans, I think that's a really difficult matchup for them. That was the worst matchup that Carolina could have gotten, just because we have seen this play out twice already, and it really wasn't close in my opinion. The Saints were the better team in both games.
Speaking of the better team, if we switch gears to the Rams and Falcons, the Rams have clearly been the better team over the course of the season, but they haven't been there before. Are you worried about Jared Goff in his first playoff start?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at this Rams team, I think they have a combined 21 playoff game appearances with everyone that's on the roster. You compare that to an Atlanta that obviously they just had 3 playoff games last season. They retained much of the roster. That's around 143, I believe, combined playoff games for the Falcons against the Rams. I've been to a few of these playoff games where you have the upstart team going against the established playoff team. The upstarts usually don't do well. Listen, we're going to be talking about Jared Goff, who clearly has no playoff experience, but we're also talking about Sean McVay, still a young coach who, while he did an amazing job this regular season, hasn't been a head coach in a playoff game also. And so is he going to let tempers flare when a call doesn't go his team's way? How is he going to rebound when his team makes an inevitable mistake or allows for a big play on defense? And so, but also look at Jared Goff, and it's just going to be so difficult without a home field advantage for these LA Rams. Obviously, they haven't really gotten that home field advantage going up against a team that knows what it takes in the playoffs. Playoff football is different. I worry about that for Jared Goff and for these Rams.
Now, the Falcons have only won 2 games against playoff teams this season. Is there any reason we should believe that Atlanta will revert back to last year's form?
I really liked what I saw out of Atlanta last week against Carolina at home. That was a playoff game for the Falcons. They had to win that game. Of course, you don't know what Seattle's going to do, but they went into that game knowing they had to take care of business. Take care of business they did. Like we mentioned earlier, they forced Cam Newton into his worst playoff game ever in his hometown. You look at what Matt Ryan is doing. Listen, I'll tell you, I thought the offensive coordinator, Steve Sarkisian, took his lumps earlier this year. They had a couple of bad games in nationally televised games. You go back to that Patriots game. Sark, in his first year taking over for Kyle Shanahan, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And when I look at this Falcons team, I think, especially after last weekend, this is a team that can make some noise. I think that they're going to beat the Rams. And then when you start looking at how these playoffs are going to shake, as I alluded to earlier, I really think this is anybody's NFC.
Now, speaking of the NFC and who was favored earlier, it was the Eagles. And if you ask them right now, I'm sure they'd say we're focused on ourselves and we believe in Nick Foles and all that. But who do you think the Eagles are secretly rooting for?
It's tough. Well, they should be secretly rooting for the Rams, but the seeding doesn't work out that way. I would think the Eagles would have a great shot against the 3-seeded Rams, but of course, being the 1 seed, they're not going to get the 3 seed. They're going to get the lower seed. And so I don't think the Eagles with Nick Foles can beat New Orleans. I don't think that the Eagles with Nick Foles can beat Carolina. Of course, they played a very close game against Carolina earlier in the season when they had Carson Wentz and the Panthers did not have Luke Kuechly. I don't think the Eagles with Nick Foles can beat the Atlanta Falcons. And so I think what they're secretly rooting for is the NFL to abolish their seeding format, to let them pick whoever they want to play, and that they would get the Los Angeles Rams if they are to beat the Atlanta Falcons, which, as we talked about earlier, I do not believe that they will. So this is going to be really tough for the Eagles. A great regular season, but when you have a Nick Foles in the playoffs, I just don't trust him. And the rest of the NFC South, which is a team that they're going to get, they're going to be too good for him.
Jonathan, appreciate it as always. We'll talk as the playoffs roll on. Recently, legendary hip-hop producer Pete Rock stopped by our studios to reminisce on some of the biggest names in sports. Take a look. I'm here with legendary producer DJ Pete Rock.
Hey.
Before we get to anything else, since you're a New York guy, came up in the 90s, have to get your thoughts on Lonzo Ball going into the Garden with his face on the Illmatic cover.
Well, we got bragging rights on the Lakers, so the Knicks, was my team, defeated them the other night. LeVar, I mean, watching the game, I saw him, scoring and really turning up. And I'm like, okay, maybe he's not as bad as people say, you know what I'm saying? In your rookie year or whatever, you always have to build up your respect. And, when I saw him play, I was like, just give him another year or so, he'll be all right.
Yeah, I think, Lonzo's rap opinions, though, are worse than anything his dad ever
definitely.
said. Like dismissing Nas, saying that 21 Savage's record was better than Jay-Z's 444.
Oh, my God. I mean, sometimes people get the wrong message out there, man. And, you have to respect a legend like Nas, you know what I'm saying, who's heavily inspired so many youth, like kids, who want to be just like him, you know what I'm saying? And that speaks in volumes. So people have to really respect that.
Plenty of people reminisce over Illmatic. Of course, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, they reminisce over you. Thought it'd be fun if we go through some athletes, and you tell me how you think people will reminisce over them. We'll start with the Knicks in New York, since you're a Knicks fan. How about Kristaps Porzingis?
Kristaps, man, he's like the actual piece that we needed in on the Knicks. I feel like we still need another piece to kind of, gel a team together. I'm just hopeful that we'll be a team to compete with in like 2 years.
Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant is my boy. I'm happy for him. A lot of people wasn't happy with his move that he made, but he was focused on getting what he wanted, and he got it. I wish he would have came to the Knicks, though. I want every player to come to the Knicks.
What about his teammate Steph Curry?
Steph is like one of the craziest shooters I've seen in the past 2 years. You know what I'm saying? And
how about ever? I mean, like some of the stuff, pull up from 35 feet, you're like, that's not fair.
Period.
Yeah.
Like ever that I've ever seen. And, being a young player. And, I think we kind of missed our chance to have him on the Knicks, but, he landed where he's supposed to be. And it's good. It's actually exciting to watch them play.
You clearly reminisce on every missed opportunity the Knicks have had. That's a long list, though. I mean,
making it to the finals back in the day with, Patrick Ewing and Starks and, actually being this close,
Yeah.
I've been, in agony for the past 40-something years.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Lonzo Ball and Illmatic. The last time the Knicks were good, Illmatic was out.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go.
But you know what? That's my team. I'm a rider, and I'm going to stick with New York.
There you go. You got any projects coming up?
Yeah, I'm actually, we're putting a band together, and I'm, going to hit up some of these jazz festivals and, do some of that, working in the studio with, artists, and just, doing what I love doing.
Pete Rock, appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, man.
We saw a rare feat Wednesday night as Grambling State's Shakeela Hill posted a quadruple double, just the fourth quadruple double in women's D1 history. That makes her our adrenaline performer presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Hill had 15 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, and 10 steals in the win over Alabama State. Now, while it's happened 4 times in the women's game, the only Division I men's basketball player to post a quadruple double was Tennessee Martin's Lester Hudson on November 13th, 2007. Now, the last NBA player to do it was Spurs big man David Robinson on February 17th of 1994, one of just 4 ever in league history. A rare feat indeed.
You don't just mess around and get a quadruple-double. I don't think so.
No, get her on the court and she's trouble. She messed around and got a quadruple-double.
No doubt.
It was a good day. It was a good day.
Well, we had a good day today. We'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We hope you had a good day as well. But make sure you follow SI Now Live on Twitter throughout the day for the latest updates and videos.